Hi there, it's Saturday the 19th of June 2021. We're continuing this month to focus on the question, is God in control? And of course the answer according to the Bible is yes, He is very much in control of this world, of our lives. In particular this week we've been thinking about God's will, His plans and purposes, His desires for this world. And not just for the world and for each one of us revealed in His Word as we can follow His Word, and that is God's will for our lives. But He also has particular things for each one of us to do. And we see this in the life of Joseph in the Bible. And what have we learned so far? Well, we've learned that God reveals His will to us, as He did to Joseph, as He did to me when I was about 18 or 19. Secondly, that God sends people into our world to help us to fulfill His will, even although there will be people who will hinder us, of course. Thirdly, that God tests us, that the pathway to pursuing and following God's will is never an easy pathway. It's full of tests and challenges that God sets for us. Fourthly, that God always provides a way forward to continue to follow His will, even when it seems there is no way. There is always a way. It's there if we will only seek it out. And lastly, God's will is completed in our lives if we will only just keep going. Just keep going. One of the kids' favourite films was Finding Nemo, and there was a wee fish called Dory, and her favourite phrase was, "Just keep swimming, 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 just keep swimming." And I always think about that, funnily enough, when I think about something like this, about keeping on going, following God, following His will. It's just keep going, going, go. And if we will just keep going, we will see God's will completed in our lives. And that's what happened to Joseph with his coat of many colours. He just kept on going. Even in prison, even in the difficult times, he just kept going. And ultimately he saw God's will fulfilled and realised that dream which he had all those years ago. Genesis 45 verses 4 to 8. Then Joseph said to his brothers, "Come close to me." This was when he had become the Prime Minister of Egypt, and his brothers came and they didn't recognise him, and he says, "Come close to me." And when they had done so, he said, "I am your brother Joseph, the one you sold into Egypt, and now do not be distressed and do not be angry with yourselves for selling me here." And listen to this, he says, "Because it was to save lives that God sent me ahead of you. For 2 years now there has been famine in the land, and for the next 5 years there will not be ploughing and reaping. But God sent me ahead of you to preserve for you a remnant on earth and to save your lives by a great deliverance. So then, it was not you who sent me here, but God." And right at the end of his life, he repeated that and he said, "You meant this all for bad, but God meant it for good." God's will was for Joseph to go through all that he went through, all the ups and downs, all the tests, all the suffering, all the difficult times, being put in a pit and being sold into slavery and being put in jail and falsely accused of molesting Potiphar's wife, and all of that Joseph went through was God's way to get Joseph to the position that he wanted him, which was in Egypt, to become the Prime Minister of Egypt. How was he, a Hebrew in a faraway country, to get to there? Well, the way that God took him there was through this crazy way of down in the dungeons and all of that, but it was all God's design to get him to the final place and to fulfill God's will for his life. And we can be certain that if we will just keep going, if we will just keep following God, even when we don't know what's happening, God will fulfill His will in our lives, and it will be complete. And perhaps we might be able to say almost with Jesus at the end of our life, "It's finished. I've done it." And we can maybe hear God's "Well done, good and faithful servant. You have run the race, you have finished the course, and now there is a crown of life for you." Hallelujah. God's will. There's nothing like it. It's the best thing in the world to fulfill, to pursue God's will. God bless you. Speak to you again next week.